The harvest of Hollow Creek. The wind doesn't just blow in Nebraska, it hunts. It sweeps across the flat, golden oceans of corn with a low, mournful whistle that sounds uncomfortably like a human sigh. For Elias Thorne, a city-born architect looking for authentic bones to restore, the Miller Farmstead seemed like a dream. Located 3 miles outside a town too small to have a stoplight, the house was a decaying Victorian beauty. It sat at the end of a long gravel driveway lined with skeletal oak trees. To the locals in the diner, it was the throat. To Elias, it was a bargain. "You don't want to be there when the corn turns brown," the waitress had told him, her eyes darting to the dusty window. The Millers didn't leave because they went broke, Elias. They left because they ran out of things to give. Elias ignored her. He was a man of blueprints and load-bearing walls. Ghosts were just drafts in old foundations. The first night, the first evening was unnervingly quiet. Elias set up a cot in what used to be the parlor. The air smelled of dried cedar and something sharper, the metallic tang of old blood or rusted iron. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in bruises of purple and orange, Elias heard it, a rhythmic thump-drag coming from the porch. He froze, his heart hammering against his ribs. He grabbed his heavy industrial flashlight and swung the door open. The porch was empty, but there, in the thick layer of dust, was a single trail. It looked as though someone had dragged a heavy, wet sack of grain from the stairs to the front door. The trail didn't end at the door, it vanished into the wood. The attic discovery. The second day brought a heat wave. The humidity was a physical weight, making the old wood of the house groan and expand. Seeking a breeze, Elias climbed the pull-down stairs to the attic. The space was filled with the relics of the 1930s, moth-eaten Sunday dresses, rusted farm tools, and a stack of leather-bound journals. He opened the most recent one, dated October 1934. The handwriting was frantic, the ink bleeding into the yellowed paper. "He is standing in the rows again. Samuel says it's just a scarecrow, but scarecrows don't move closer every time you blink. The soil is dry, the cattle are dying, but the thing in the corn is fat. It's getting taller. Today I saw it wearing Samuel's hat. Samuel hasn't come inside for dinner." Elias felt a cold prickle on his neck. He looked out the small circular attic window that overlooked the north field. In the center of the parched earth stood a lone pole. A burlap figure hung from it, its head bowed. He blinked. The figure seemed a foot closer to the house than it had been a moment ago. The midnight visitor. That night, Elias couldn't sleep. The house was alive with settling sounds that felt too deliberate. Around 2 a.m., the temperature in the parlor plummeted. His breath hitched in the air in silvery plumes. From the kitchen came the sound of a chair scraping across the floor. Screech! Elias grabbed his phone and crept toward the doorway. The kitchen was bathed in the pale, sickly light of a harvest moon. Sitting at the heavy oak table was a silhouette. It was a man, or the shape of one, dressed in tattered overalls. "Who's there?" Elias's voice cracked. The figure didn't turn. It was hunched over, its hands moving rhythmically. It sounded like it was husking corn, the dry, papery tear of the leaves. "Rip, rip, rip." "I'm calling the police," Elias lied, his hands shaking so hard he dropped his phone. The figure stopped husking. It slowly turned its head. There was no face, only a mask of stitched burlap, stained with dark, oily fluid. Where the eyes should have been, 2 black crow's feathers were pinned into the fabric. "The soil is hungry," a voice rasped, sounding like dry husks rubbing together. "And the rent is due." The figure rose, unfolding itself like a collapsing ladder. It was nearly 7 feet tall, its limbs unnaturally long and jointed. Elias bolted. He didn't go for the front door. The thump-drag sound was already vibrating against the porch. He ran upstairs, locking himself in the master bedroom. The encroaching field. He spent the next 3 hours pushed against the corner of the room, clutching a framing hammer. Outside, the wind picked up, but it wasn't the sound of air. It was the sound of thousands of dry cornstalks scratching against the siding of the house. He looked out the window. His blood turned to ice. The cornfield was moving, not the plants themselves, but the boundary. The rows of corn were now growing through the floorboards of the porch. They were sprouting from the gravel of the driveway. High-speed growth, fueled by some dark subterranean engine, was swallowing the house. A knock came at the bedroom door. Soft, polite. "Elias," the voice whispered. It sounded like the waitress from the diner now. "Elias, come see the harvest. It's so beautiful." He didn't answer. He watched as a green shoot of corn punched through the hardwood floor in the center of the room. Within seconds, it grew to the ceiling, its leaves sharp as razors. Another followed. Then another. The house wasn't just being haunted, it was being reclaimed by the land. The final row. By dawn, the bedroom door was splintering, not from an axe, but from the sheer pressure of the corn stalks pressing against it from the hallway. Elias realized the attic was his only hope. He climbed through the ceiling hatch and pulled the ladder up just as the bedroom door gave way. Below him, the room filled with a literal tide of gold and green. He scrambled to the attic window. The entire farm was gone. There was no driveway, no road, no horizon, only an infinite rustling sea of corn. And there, standing just outside the window on a platform of twisted stalks, was the tall man in the burlap mask. He was holding something. It was a small white architect's scale, Elias's own tool. "You wanted to change the bones of this place," the tall man hissed, reaching a long wooden finger toward the glass. "But the bones belong to the dirt." The window shattered. Epilogue. A week later, the local sheriff drove out to the Miller place. He found the gravel driveway, but the house was gone. Not burned down, not moved, just gone. In its place was a perfectly rectangular patch of corn, taller and greener than any other crop in the county. In the center of that patch stood a new scarecrow. It wore a modern gore-stained flannel shirt and a pair of expensive city boots. If you stood close enough, the sheriff later told his wife, you could hear the scarecrow sobbing. But of course, that was just the wind. The wind in Nebraska doesn't just blow, it remembers.